And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Yellow Jacket Coaches Show with head coach Steve Bordeaux. Of course, I'm your host, Keith Womack, and for tonight's show, the Yellow Jackets picked up their second win of the season this past week at Overhills by a 21-14 score, and we will be looking for win number 3 this week at home against South Granville. We remind you that the Coaches Show this season's air live every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock here on WFJA Sports 105.5, and these shows will air 1 hour before game time on Friday nights. Video of each coach's show will post on Wednesdays on the homepage of the WFJA website and the WFJA Facebook page. Our coaches show each week are brought to you by a great group of sponsors, and we'd like to thank each one of them and hope that you will thank them with your business as well. And of course, bringing you the coaches shows for 2022 are Jones Printing Company, Wilkinson Cadillac Chevrolet Buick GMC, Domino's, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurant, Farm Bureau of Tramway, Sheriff Brian Estes, and Fix It Plumbing. We're going to take a short break and bring in head coach Steve Bordeaux, and we'll be back for the Yellow Jacket Coaches Show right after these messages.
WFJA would like to thank the following advertisers for bringing you the Lee County Coaches Show: Jones Printing Company, Domino's, WilkinsonCars.com, Sheriff Brian Estes, Farm Bureau of Tramway, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, Fix It Plumbing, and Brick Capital Video.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Yellow Jacket Football Coaches Show. Welcome to Yellow Jacket Football Coach for Week 3. I'm joined in the booth by Lee County Head Coach Steve Bordeaux. Coach, Yellow Jackets off to a smoky 21-14 road victory at Overhills to improve to 2-0 on the season. Of course, we're referring to the beautiful neighbor who decided to burn some trash during the ball game last week. It was pretty smoky, but Jackets did come away with the 21-14 victory on the road, 2-0 this season. That's all that matters.
We had to, I guess, battle through that little smoke, but it was probably the same on both sides. Different obstacles, but the boys came through. And really, I felt like we played hard. There were some things that we could have done better. There's some coaching points, but the effort was there, and the ability to keep fighting was there, and that's what put us, in the win column.
Well, Coach, it was a close game and one that you had to fight through a little bit of adversity, but a really good quarterback for Overhills that threw some really nice passes. Give us your thoughts on the game, and I know that there were some adjustments made at some point in time because he was really hot to begin the game. You guys seemed to put a clamp on it and ended up winning the game.
Yes, I think a little bit really the adjustment-wise was continue to remind the boys their responsibility on our defense. We didn't actually change a play call. We just emphasized their job and making sure they understood the things that they were beating us on. Up front, our defensive line, Coach Green got those guys, playing football and getting to the quarterback a little bit more and shortening that length of time we had to cover. And the secondary, Coach Herron, Coach Herron, Coach Little, and Coach King did a great job of adjusting back there.
Well, Coach B.J. Brown, another outstanding game. Took a few more carries this week, but 203 yards. I thought JoJo Jennings didn't touch the ball much, but when he did, he was very, very effective. I even thought after Mark Schlesinger got sacked a couple of times early in the game, he was in the negative 20-plus range, and he ended up with 22 yards total. I love to see, no matter how little it is, when a quarterback is positive. You guys did a great job running the ball, 280 yards on the total.
Yeah, the offensive line did a good job adjusting to some things that Overhills was doing. Overhills was still packing the box, and we were still able to run the ball for that many rushing yards. So that was a good thing to see. With 7 yards a carry, even with some negative plays on some sacks, is definitely some successful football.
Coach, Mark Schlesinger didn't have the best night throwing the ball. Anything you can, say that would have caused that, because he's been great so far this season, but just 5 of 14 last Friday.
Yes, I think it was one of those really at all levels of the offense. We had a couple plays where the offensive line missed somebody and somebody's getting the mark a little bit earlier than we want them to. A couple times we got a route that wasn't as good as it could have been. A couple times we dropped the pass. A couple times it wasn't a great throw. So a little bit of things that in all areas we can tighten up and we can increase our completion percentage and those yards will jump up real quick when that happens.
Well, again, a victory is a victory. I know it was a little tight when we knew going into this game, Overhill's with a lot of exceptional athletes, and I think they proved it. I was very impressed with Bryant. We talked about this earlier, throwing the ball, really picking the secondary apart. I mean, he was throwing great passes, and but you guys made those adjustments and really made him struggle the last half of the game.
Yeah, I think the guys up front is really where all that starts. When a lot of people see a completion happen, everybody looks at the secondary to begin with, but sometimes it's just you can only cover for so long. So you have a time element that comes into play. The defensive line has to get there and shorten the length of time the DBs have to cover. Sometimes it's actually the assignment. Maybe we blow it. Maybe we don't drop like we're supposed to at linebackers. So the DBs have to cover areas they aren't supposed to. And sometimes we do blow a coverage. So there's three different things that count for a successful passing play, and we tighten those things up as the game went on.
Well, Coach, let's look ahead at some of the scores. Or look back at some of the scores from last week. And, of course, all this was non-conference, but Lee County with the 21-14 victory. Green Hope, Southern Lee stayed with them for a pretty good part of that game. We were keeping the fans up to date with the scoring, hoping they could pull that one out, but Green Hope comes in the end and defeats Southern Lee by a 17-12 score. Grays Creek, unfortunately, a big victory over Union Pines, 35-12. Pinecrest gets back in the win column with a 35-6 victory over Anson County. Wow, 0-2. I never thought I'd say this, but Richmond County now at 0-2. Butler are a really good team, and they play a tough schedule, Richmond County does, but they go to 0-2 after Butler defeats them 40-7. Another shocker to me, Hoggard with an 18-8 victory over Scotland County. So Richmond County and Scotland County both 0-2?
I think Scotland's 1-1.
Okay, Scotland's 1-1.
And Hoggard's a really good football program too. So,
and then you've got Hope County in the conference. They did pick up a victory with a 30-0 slashing of Lumberton, and so it was nice. Conference seems to be winning some key games, not winning as many as we did early in the season last year. But of course, all we're worried about are the Yellow Jackets. And speaking of that, go ahead and talk about this week's conference. Of course, Lee County will be hosting South Granville here at Paul B. Gay Stadium on Friday night. Southern Lee will be playing South Johnston. Pinecrest will be playing Middle Creek. Hope County will travel to Southview. Scotland County will play Marlboro. That's down in South Carolina. So they'll be hosting them. Richmond County will be at Cardinal Gibbons. Another really tough game. Former Sanford kid, I believe, on Cardinal Gibbons. So probably a good game to catch. Union Pines will be hosting Western Harnett. So that is your non-conference Week 3 schedule for the 2022 Sand Hills Athletic Conference. And we just wanted to make sure that everybody was up to date with how that was going. And, of course, Lee County right now, Coach, at 2-0 in the conference. Scotland County, as you said earlier, at 1-1. Pinecrest also at 1-1. Richmond County at 0-2. Hope County at 1-1, Union Pines at 1-1, and then the Cavaliers now at 0-2. So those are your conference results from last week and your conference, non-conference schedules. We won't get into conference play, I guess, for a couple more weeks. So can't wait for all that to start happening, and as the Yellow Jackets continue to march on, and we're looking forward to a lot of good things this year.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the conference is I think on the continue to rise. One thing I'll say is a lot of very tough non-conference games. So as a conference, I think some people have went out there and found some tough challenges, and obviously those things usually pay off as we get deeper in the season. So a lot of those programs are playing some of the top teams in the state.
Well, Coach, one last question before we go to a break. You've had a chance now to take a couple of games and break them down, watch some film. What are some of the main things that you guys have addressed in the last week or two? And, how's the team adjusted?
Yeah, so I do think one thing our coaches do is even on successful plays, we continue to coach through any little small thing. The way we try to coach is, would this rep win a state championship? It's not will it just win every Friday night. You know, we may score a touchdown on the play, and there may be 3 things we could fix that might not work later in the season. So that is one thing that we address on as many plays as possible, and that's in the game. That's on Sundays when we have coaches meetings, and that's Monday when we watch the film with the kids, and all the way through practice. So it's a little small things that aren't really seen from the stands. That a lot of times people might think, hey, we just scored a 60-yard touchdown, but you know, in a game where a guy doesn't miss a tackle, or you know, and we missed a block, you know, those things don't happen. So we've been addressing little things.
Well, Coach, and I know a lot of times penalties can be part of who's calling the game, what conference officials you have, because some call them different than others. One thing I was very impressed with, I think the Jackets really toned down some of their penalties. They only had 4 or 5, I think, the entire game. So a nice job there. A couple of other things that, you know, we know the snapping for the extra points seems to be much better. Still got a little work to do on the long snap, but get back there at the punter. But did a nice job getting some punts off this past week. So looks like the hard work is paying off for the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, hopefully so. We emphasize special teams and keep grinding on those things. You know, Griff is doing a great job punting, and he's actually snapping on field goals. Logan Walker is doing a great job of learning on the fly of how to be a long snapper, and continues to get better at that every week. Hopefully, we just don't punt a whole lot, and we don't have to worry about that at all. But we work on it.
I think you said last year that's your least favorite play in the game.
Play. Yes, sir.
Well, of course, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Jones Printing Company, Wilkinson, Cadillac, Chevrolet, Buick GMC, Domino's, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, Farm Bureau of Tramway, Sheriff Brian Estes, and Fix It Plumbing. We're going to take a short break and hear from a few of our sponsors. We'll be right back to talk more Yellow Jacket football right after these messages.
WFJA would like to thank the following advertisers for bringing you the Lee County Coaches Show: Jones Printing Company, Domino's, WilkinsonCars.com, Sheriff Brian Estes, Farm Bureau of Tramway, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, Fix It Plumbing, and Brick Capital Video.
And welcome back once again to the Yellow Jacket Coaches Show. Of course, I'm your host, Keith Womack, and I'm here with Coach Steve Bordeaux. Coach, we had some outstanding play last week in the victory over Hills. And, of course, we have some great sponsors, Norman Financial Group and Bubba's Subs and Pizza has combined to give us some players of the game. And, of course, John and I get a chance to talk it over and choose those. And on the offensive side of the ball, B.J. Brown, 202 yards. What an outstanding game. And he is our Norman Financial Group and Bubba's Subs player of the game, offensively.
Yeah, BJ had another great game. He continues to develop it as a full running back, not just a guy that wants the ball. He's doing some things and affecting some plays when he doesn't have the ball in his hand. And that allowed Mark to have a couple runs. That allow one of JoJo's runs that happens because some eyes are going to where BJ's going. And he'll still continue to get better. That's the great thing about him, the way he wants to work. He still wants to improve.
Oh, he's so elusive. Yeah. When guys are trying to tackle him, you know, tackling, I know it's kind of taught as something easy to do, but when you've got a player like BJ, it's not always that easy.
No, sir, not at all. Sometimes in practice, it looks a little bit unfair if one guy leaves a little bit extra space, it leaves another guy hanging big time. So he can make some moves.
Well, also from the Norman Financial Group and Bubba's Subs, our player of the game on the defensive side. You know, a name we haven't called a lot in the past, but we sure called his name a lot Friday night. Very proud of the work, and I'm sure you are. That was done by Prince Lambus. Yeah,
Prince had a great game. Prince continues to be a student of the game, is what I call him. When I left today, he was asking questions to Coach Green and still wanting to improve, and still a young guy, only a junior. Had 2 huge sacks in the game. One was on a 4th down in the first half. Got them off the field, obviously, on the 4th down. They won them into the game on 4th down. So he had 2 sacks in very key situations and also made a couple other tackles in between. I expect his name to get called a lot throughout the rest of the year.
Now, Coach, I got to ask a question, too. And when you're sitting in there with the defensive players, I'm sure you're watching some film, and you show that sack Do you just get a big smile out of it?
Yeah, so I definitely think those guys enjoy that because we coach them hard, but we love them just as much. So on the plays when they do things well, we try to give those pats on the back, and I think it's a good give and take in those situations.
Well, it's related back to family life. Everybody knows their father's got to be the discipline, but they always love it when he gives them a big hug, and I'm sure that's what you guys are doing with these players.
WFJA would like to thank the following advertisers for bringing you the Lee County Coaches
Cadillac,
Show.
Buick,
Jones Printing
Chevrolet,
Company,
GMC,
Domino's,
they do our player
WilkinsonCars.com,
of the game, and of course, we
Sheriff
refer
Brian
to
Estes,
you guys, the coaching staff,
Farm Bureau of Tramway,
to choose that
the Dairy Bar and
recipient,
Flame Restaurants,
and, he will be the guy
Fix
who
It Plumbing,
has his name
and Brick
inscribed
Capital
on
Video.
on the trophy here, and then later placed at the gymnasium for everybody to see. So our Wilkinson Coaches Player of the Game, Coach.
And so this week, the coaches, we went with BJ. BJ, another outstanding game. He carried the ball 27 times, touched the ball 27 times, and affected it on just about every other play. As of when we walked in here, I don't know if everybody's updated their stats, but he was leading the state in rushing through 2 games. So hopefully, and he has big goals. He maybe some unrealistic goals with some of the stats he's trying to put up, but we'll take it game by game, and he'll keep toting the rock.
Well, Coach, I don't have the stat sheet in front of me, but getting back to the player of your defense, I got to mention this, and I forgot to earlier. We had a kid that played running back for Overhills that had, I believe, 223 yards in game 1 on like 12 carries.
Yeah.
It was like very minimal. Had a big game, obviously. If I'm not mistaken, I think he had 20 or 25 yards of total running yards on about 25 carries the other night. So I thought an outstanding job by your defense.
Yeah, a lot of that starts with the guys in the box. We talked a lot about those defensive linemen, but Coach Green's got Ronnie Hooker, Braden Kirkland, Ross Johnson. We rotate about 8 guys on the defensive line, which is probably the deepest we've been at that position since I've been here. And they're all quality guys who can get to the football. And as the game goes on, that allows them to still be fresh, and it paid some dividends late in the game. And of course, the linebackers with JoJo, Ayo, Isaiah, Raleigh Cotton, those guys made a whole lot of plays and really contained that running game.
Yeah, Cotton had a couple of big key
Very
plays
big.
in that game too. Defense, especially that your front and then your linebackers. I thought they played exceptional. And some nice blitzes off the corners a couple of times the other night. Coach, but getting back to some of your players, we talked about this a little bit, I believe, last week. You lost a lot of talent on the receiver side of the ball last year, and we were kind of wondering off the air, who would you guys go to?
Right.
You had some big holes to fill, obviously, from graduation. How do you feel about that group so far through week 2, and anybody in particular stepping up?
Yeah, so, Coach Lett and Coach Thompson coach our receivers, and, they do an outstanding job with those guys, former Jacket receivers himself. So, passing that knowledge back along to the boys. Logan Walker and Kendall Morris, Isaiah Peoples, Jaden Hill, Anthony Battle, those guys have been the main guys rotating in. Kalen Brown and even JoJo taking a couple reps at receiver. That group is another quality group. A lot of the guys are playing both ways, so there'll be a good rotation there. But I feel like across the board between the 4 receivers, we're as dynamic as we've been. Our guys in the slot are tough one-on-one tackles. Our guys on the outside can stretch the field and still do the things we're going to do in the screen game. And all of the guys are invested in blocking. They understand, both the slot guys have played running back before, so they understand the importance of, when receivers block, we can have big gains. So they're a big part of everything we do.
Yeah, that's one thing I remember from last year. A couple of those receivers, how good of blockers they were on the outside. Because sometimes you see, especially in high school, even sometimes in college, you see receivers that just take a play off when they know it's not coming their way. And, you always hate to see that. But I think this group has been coached up pretty well, and they continue to do an outstanding job. It is homecoming week. Of course, this week's opponent, South Granville. Running back Kawan Bobbitt just had over 200 yards in his last game. Coach, 80% of their plays, 71 out of 88 so far this year, have been on the ground. How does that change your game plan for this Friday night's game?
No, it really doesn't change much. They are an effective run team, even when people know they're going to run the football. They've been able to pop a couple big plays in the passing game because people do have to load the box a little bit more than than a typical team. They do a really good job scheme-wise of getting the ball to Bobbitt. He's played a lot of quarterback the last few years. Now they're playing him at some running back, some quarterback. He plays a lot of defense. He's all over the field. They have another really good running back, a really good tight end. I really feel like it's the same team we've played as when they were sophomores. We played them in the mud. When they were juniors, we played them, last year, and now it's the same group. It's a lot of the same names. So this team has continued to grow, I guess, together.
I'm still amazed that they got that field in that much better shape last year as opposed to 2 years ago, because it was a mud bowl. We want to remind everybody that's going to the game this Friday night, of course, it's at Paul B. Gay Stadium right here in Sanford. And, Coach, they can go to gofan.com to get their tickets. Make sure you go online and get those ordered. Come out early and tailgate.
Yep.
I always like to see the fans out there early. But I want to thank you, Coach, Coach Bordeaux, for joining us tonight as we get ready for this week's game against South Granville. And, Coach, best of luck against this week's opponent.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, we'd like to thank all of you for listening. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
WFJA would like to thank the following advertisers for bringing you the Lee County Coaches Show: Jones Printing Company, Domino's, WilkinsonCars.com, Sheriff Brian Estes, Farm Bureau of Tramway, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, Fix It Plumbing, and Brick Capital Video.
And welcome back to the Lee County Coaches Show. I'm your host, Keith Womack, and we'd like to say a special thank you to Coach Bordeaux for coming in tonight. We'd like to remind you that our Coaches Show this season will air live every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock right here on 105.5 WFJA Sports. And these shows will re-air 1 hour before game time each Friday night. The video of each Coaches Show will post on Wednesdays, and that'll be on the homepage of the WFJA website and the WFJA Facebook page. Our Coaches Shows each week are brought to you by a great group of sponsors. And, of course, that includes Jones Printing Company, Wilkinson Cadillac Chevrolet Buick GMC, Domino's, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, Farm Bureau of Tramway, Sheriff Brian Estes, and Fix It Plumbing. We thank you all for listening to tonight's show. It's time for Yellow Jacket Football.